So I will probably, so that we don't take up too much of our time, I'm going to jump in and do some announcements quick before we get started, okay? And then I'm going to introduce our wonderful panelists. So the first thing I want to mention, well, first actually, I'll say hello. My name is Becka Oliver. I'm the Executive Director at the Writers League of Texas. For those of you who are just finding us in our online programming, we are putting on weekly live webinars like this one. So definitely check out our website if you'd like to. And we're so glad that you're here tonight. You can find us at writersleague.org. We also do online classes. We used to do in-person classes, but now we're not for obvious reasons. So we've moved a lot of those in-person classes to the online world. And our next one is this Saturday with John Pipkin, talking about pacing the plot of your novel or short story. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. The registration will end tomorrow. And then I also want to mention that next week, we're circling back to the very first of these Ask Us Anythings that we did post shelter in place. And that was Ask Us Anything, what we're reading now. So we'll have the Writers League of Texas staff and then also some special guests are going to come on and we're going to share the books that we've been reading. And then we're going to encourage you guys ahead of time to send us some of the books that you've been reading and tell us a little bit about what you're loving about them. And it'll just be a really fun group sort of reading recommendation night. So that's next Thursday, April 30th at 8 p.m. Central Time. And then I want to mention that we are really trying to support booksellers at this time. And especially here in Texas, we have a lot of wonderful independent bookstores that could use our help. So we're doing a special one-page salon event Saturday, May 2nd at 8 p.m. and it's free for anyone to attend, but we're suggesting a $10 donation. And all of the money that we raise is going to go to Bookwoman, which is, for those of you in the Austin area, our independent feminist bookstore and really just such an important part of Austin life and Austin literary culture. And unfortunately, they are seeing their rent raised pretty drastically in the last couple of months and for the future. And so we're trying to do everything we can to put some money in Bookwoman's pocket and make sure that they stick around post all of this pandemic stuff. So we hope you'll join us on Saturday, May 2nd. We have a pretty cool lineup already. Mary Pauline Lowry, Lisa Olstein, Richard Santos, and Deb Olin-Unferth. They're going to read one page from a work in progress. So these will be pieces that no one has heard before. And we'll have a lot of witty banter. And we want you all to dress up for the occasion because we feel like we need an excuse to get outside and dress up. So I probably won't, but I don't normally. So we are excited about that. One Page Salon will send you more information and we hope you can join us on Saturday, May 2nd. And then finally, again, speaking of independent bookstores, we, whenever we do this event, the Ask Us Anythings, we compile a list of all of the books that are mentioned, and we will send you a link to Book People's page right now, an indie bookstore here in Austin. They'll have a special page for us where all of the books are mentioned, and you'll have a chance to buy them. But whether you buy it from these books or audios from Book People or somewhere else, we encourage you to just remember to support your indie bookstores right now. And always. And then I'll just mention that we also have a podcast, the Writers League of Texas podcast. We have a ton of great recordings on there, conversations with authors, with industry professionals. So if you're looking for more, less visual, more audio, then feel free to check out our podcast. And if you're looking for more visual, less audio, you can check out our YouTube channel, which has a lot of great recordings on it already. And you'll find some free craft presentations that we've been making, especially for these last few weeks. And then also a lot of our live events that we've been doing. Oh my goodness. All right. So before we get started, just a reminder that if you're going to send messages in the chat box, you want to send it to all panelists and attendees so that we all see it. Consider holding your questions to the end. You guys sent in some really great questions for this conversation, and I'm excited to see how this all progresses and some of the answers that we're going to get. But if you have a question that's pertaining to something we're currently talking about, you can go ahead and send it in. We'll try to get to it. I'm the only person monitoring the chat box on the Writers Lake of Texas end. So, so if I miss it, definitely bring it back at the end. Okay. And now, without further ado, let's put the spotlight on the people that we should have the spotlight on, and that's our amazing panelists. So Amanda DiCerno is president and thank you, is president and publisher of the Penguin Random House Audio Publishing Group in the US. Guys, it's a huge deal that we have these three people here tonight, by the way, because they're extremely busy and important. So overseeing the Random House Audio, Penguin Audio, Books on Tape, and Listening Library imprints, she has guided the audio business through a period of robust growth, increasing the audio list from 500 titles in 2008 to 1,400 titles in 2019. Under her leadership, the division has published audiobook bestsellers, including Michelle Obama's Becoming, George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire series, Delia Owens' Where the Crawdads Sing, Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit, Margaret Atwood's The Testaments, John Grisham's The Guardians, Celeste Ng's Little Fires Everywhere, Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time, and the Harry Potter series. So basically you work on really small books no one has ever heard of. And I think you're from Texas, Amanda, is that correct?
I am. I'm a native Houstonian, and I really do feel like that is the most important part of my bio.
Well, we are so excited to have you here. So thank you so much for joining us.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Of course. Oh my goodness, who is this handsome devil? So Lance Fitzgerald heads the Penguin Random House Audio editorial team as Vice President, Content and Business Development. Under his leadership, the team has acquired audio rights for the much anticipated new novel from Elena Ferrante, The Lying Life of Adults. The international sensation, How Contagion Works by Paulo Giordano, soccer legend Hristo Stoichkov's memoir, and more. He was previously subsidiary rights director for over 2 decades. He's a member of the Frankfurt Book Fair Foreign Rights Advisory Board and has been a featured speaker at the Writers Lake of Texas, Authors and Artists Representatives, the Columbia and NYU Summer Publishing Courses, the Young to Publishing Group, and at the Slice Writers Conference. And I will say, Lance started this job not too long ago. And part of the reason why I thought about this topic for tonight is because I got to listen to him talk to my students at a class I'm teaching about the audio business, and they were so enthralled and interested. And he gave such a great presentation that I thought we need to talk about this more. This is a topic that I think a lot of people don't know a lot about, but that is a really big part of the business. So thank you, Lance Fitzgerald, for being here.
Thank you, my friend, for having me.
You're welcome. So far. Donna Pasanante, is that right? Oh, is Senior Vice President, Marketing and Publicity, Penguin Random House Audio, joining the team in early 2019. Having worked at Penguin Random House for more than 15 years, she has led marketing efforts on a broad range of best-selling books, including those by President Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Ina Garten, Max Brooks, and Eric Larson, as well as on Penguin Random House Audio's best-in-class productions, including Angels in America, Rachel Maddow's Blowout, and Glennon Doyle's recent Reese's Book Club pick, Untamed. Previously, she led author events for Barnes & Noble bookstores nationally. A Floridian by birth and a New Yorker by nature, she spends most of her time reading or traveling whenever possible. And back in my former life in publishing, I got to work with Donna on some book projects that you were just so amazing at what you do. So I'm really excited to have you here as well. So thank you, Donna, for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Usually this is when you hear the huge applause, but everybody else is silent. So we'll just imagine it in our heads. Okay, so we're gonna dig into this topic. And I think that you guys saw some questions ahead of time, and I know you've been thinking about some answers to them. And I'll just say that what I've done is gone ahead and arranged them, sort of grouped them by topic. So we'll dive in, but I also would probably ask you guys some questions throughout, some follow-up questions perhaps, and then, you know, feel free, everybody who's out there chatting, to add, or who's listening, to add some things to the chat box if you have something that you want to ask. Okay, so we're going to jump in. So I figured we'd talk first, like more generally, broadly, about the sort of big picture of the industry and audiobooks' place in it, and where audiobooks are headed. And this is something that a few people were curious about. And I know, Amanda, we were going to start with you talking about what some of the current trends in audiobook publishing are.
So thank you, Becca. So the biggest trend, and I think likely the reason that we're here, is because for the past 5 or 6 years, we have seen double-digit growth in audio. So audio was always a part of the book publishing industry. Our listening library imprint was founded back in 1955, so it's not new. But when you start seeing double-digit growth, suddenly everybody thinks you're the new kid on the block. So the trend has absolutely been around the growth. But within that, there are a couple of interesting things. Mystery and thriller tends to be the category that is most preferred in audio, and we really over-index in mystery and thriller as the lead category. Until the last couple of weeks, most people listened while they were commuting, and we were starting to see a trend that over the years, we do a survey with the Audio Publishers Association, and we were starting to see that more and more people were listening to audiobooks to relax and unwind. And all of us had always thought of audio as a multitasking experience. You listen while you commute, or you listen while you're jogging, or you listen while you're cooking or crafting. And while all of those things are true, what really surprised us was the number of people who actually listen in the evening to relax and consider it their me time or their private time to just relax with a book by listening. And since we've all been quarantined, that trend has really become more pronounced as fewer and fewer people commuting in. So the trends we're seeing from Audible and some of the other digital platforms are that people have really migrated that morning and after work listening to late at night going to sleep listening. Some demographic information that's interesting is that our audience is very young. Every year that we survey, we can survey more 18-year-olds. The 18 to 24 category usually increases by a point, and the 64 plus category decreases by a point. Over 50% of frequent audiobook listeners are under age 44. So it's a very young and growing demographic. We just had this report released yesterday, the annual report, so this is very timely. And one of the questions we ask every year is if audiobook listening is a replacement for a book you would have purchased, or if it is in addition to a book you would have purchased. So are you adding to your overall book consumption by listening, or are you replacing? And that's firmly 50-50. So half of people are replacing a print or an ebook with an audiobook. It's just switching formats. But 50%, and I think it's so fantastic, are new people coming to books altogether who wouldn't have purchased a book at all. So that's exciting for everyone to get their stories out there.
Do you have any sense of, is it the technology would be my guess, but any sense of why the listeners have become, that's a trend getting younger, right? Like it's not 20 years ago, wasn't okay. So,
Right.
so is it the technology? Is it just being used to being able to now listen to things on your phone or any other really simple device?
I think it's absolutely the technology. So I always say we all have our own portable audiobook store with us everywhere we go. So we have the capability to download anything instantly and listen to it. So that the devices and technology are certainly a huge part of the trend. The other part of the trend is that the title catalog has grown so much. And 16 years ago, when I started in audio, we published very few of our books from Penguin Random House and across the industry as audiobooks. So oftentimes you'd see a book reviewed or it would start to get attention and the audiobook edition wouldn't be there. Now that almost never happens. So everything that's published in the US in the English language usually has an audiobook edition day and date. So that catalog is so rich now that when people go into the audiobook environment to find something, they almost always find what they're looking for. And that's really created a stickiness that keeps people there.
And then how big of a part of the market am I who buys the audiobook and the actual book?
We consider the saints of the book publishing industry, and we are delighted to have you. And frankly, I'm doing that right now. I'm listening to something, and then when I'm in my living room and want to be with my family, I'm picking up the book so I can, be a part of what's going on around me without a headset on. But in the morning when I'm out for a walk, I'm listening. So many of us are ambidextrous.
Wonderful. I feel much better. Thank you so much. So the next question, which sort of felt like it, I think you're touching on that, but where do you see the industry in 5 years? What sort of big changes are coming? Obviously you're not a time traveler, but I would imagine you guys have a pretty great perspective on what that looks like.
All of us want the crystal ball. That's what we're all looking for in publishing. But I think, the easiest thing to assume is that the physical market for audiobooks will be completely gone. And audio is used to changing formats. So it was originally LPs, vinyl audiobooks. We still have some of them in our lobby. When I started with audio, years ago, we were releasing Harry Potter #5, and I was in charge of publicity at the time, and I wrote a press release that 70% of the book would be, the audiobook would be released on cassette and 30% on CD. And of course, digital was something very few people had even heard of at that point. So just to think, in the past decade and a half, we've so quickly gone from cassette being the primary format to CD being the primary format to now digital download. And who knows what's coming next? It'll obviously be a digital format in some way, but who knows what the future holds. But I do see physical goods going away.
And it's just great to, I think, hear so many people talking about audio right now, and that it really feels like it is a part of the industry, whatever's coming, that is a really exciting part of the industry. All right, we're gonna keep going, guys. Now this is a little doom and gloom, but will all books eventually be in audio or ebook format instead of paper? What do you guys think?
No. Am I taking this question? This is for me?
I think this might have been a new one for you guys.
Okay, this is a new one. So all books are already in audio and and paper. And the great news is that people love to read physical books. I mean, I love to read physical books. I think all of us on this panel love to read physical books. We love our children to read physical books. We also love to listen to audiobooks, and sometimes we love an ebook. And I think that for our authors, the best thing that we can do is make their stories available in every format. So whatever the consumer needs at any given moment, they can choose what's best for their lifestyle and find our authors' works in that format.
Great. Good answer.
Thank you.
All right. So this leads us to, I think, a big part of what many people were curious about, which is what makes, what works as an audiobook, what makes for a good audiobook. And the first one that I'll ask, which sort of comes straight out of what we were just talking about in terms of even just what the company is doing, is your staff involved in the acquisition process? Are you asked to contribute dollars towards advance when an imprint of Penguin Random House is bidding on a book? Lance, are you taking this one?
I'll take this one. As the editorial team for the audio division, we are involved, and editors come to us all the time and they say, we're bidding on this book from this author. What do you think? How do you think your audio sales will be? Can you contribute? Can you help us buy this book? And depending on the book and the author and what we think about it, we contribute a little more, we contribute a little less. We have a standard that we go by, which is pretty on target. We consult with Donna and the publicity and marketing team and with our producers. What can we do with this audiobook? How can we make it special? But we're involved in the acquisition process.
And you, I guess, then have a good sense of, yeah, what's going to make for a good audio and what is potentially going to work in your market. And then I would imagine that occasionally maybe you're just told we're doing an audio of this book and you are contributing this much money towards it.
Sometimes that happens.
So this was an interesting question, and I'm not sure if this came after you guys got your questions or not, but do you think writers should keep in mind the performance potential of their work while they're crafting stories?
I'll take this one if you guys.
Okay.
Go for it.
You know, for the marketing team for audio, we just filmed a whole series of videos for one of our programs, and we had a number of narrators in the studio talking just about this very thing and how important it is to have a sense of place and a sense of author's intention when you're reading a story, and to stay true to what the author is trying to give to the reader, and not to create something that is not in tone with the book. So I think that the answer to this is a resounding yes.
And so for writers, that might be an even interesting thing for them to have in their heads. I mean, oftentimes when we do craft talks, we hear the advice, read your dialogue out loud, figure out if that dialogue rings true, if, you know, the story feels real based on the words on the page and how they flow together. So maybe that's kind of dovetails directly into this idea of thinking about how performance ideal it might be.
So in many cases, you know, you have a professional actor who is narrating an audiobook. And in some cases you have the actual author who's narrating their book. But in any case, the producer who's working on the audiobook is talking to the author. So if it is a professional actor who's narrating, they're having a conversation about what that author envisions for their audiobook. What kind of voice perhaps are we thinking that we want? You know, that it's not done in a vacuum.
Right.
There's many people consulting on how we get to the point that we've cast the narrator for an audiobook.
I love it. Thank you. I love this question because I have no idea what the answer is. Do you publish picture books on audio? And if yes, how does that work?
We do publish picture books on audio.
How does that work?
How does it work is just like a regular book. You read the words on the page and you tell the story. I think particularly for children's picture books, we don't need to add a lot. Those words tell the story in themselves, and the illustrations are beautiful and they're extra. But the words are there. I think sometimes what we do, obviously they're very short. Sometimes they run only 5 minutes. So what we do sometimes is we'll put 2 different versions on the same audiobook. Right now we're looking at recording a children's book from one of our Christian imprints, and we're going to have the author read a version and also his daughter read a version. And we're going to package both of those together on the audiobook and sell them as a bundle. The one place it gets a little different is with graphic novels. We're also starting to do more graphic novels on audio, which seems not like a natural fit. We're finding creative, exciting ways to make that happen as well, with a little more descriptive material. For both picture books and graphic novels, we maybe add some sound effects or a little bit of music to kind of bump it up a little bit, but we're doing it. We're recording them, and you can find them online and listen to them.
So interesting. I think one of my favorite audiobooks that I've heard in the last several years is the George Saunders, Lincoln in the Bardo, which I'm sure many people have said because it's just so brilliant the way that it was done. And I could see where you could use that treatment almost with a graphic novel and see if you can make it work, right? Cool. Thanks, guys. All right. Where do audiobooks typically fit into the production and rollout timeline? Hardcover usually comes first, then the paperback. What determines whether a book gets made? Oh, well, this is a second side question, but what determines whether a book gets made into an audiobook? Do you guys produce and roll out the audiobook in time with a hardcover, or what is your schedule?
Our goal is to always be simultaneous. We think that, and we know that because the print divisions are doing marketing and they're doing publicity, and if we're also doing marketing and publicity, the two parts of that build really, really strongly together and help really promote the publication across the board. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes we're a little bit delayed, and maybe for a narrator issue, or we have to wait until that text is final. But our goal is to always publish simultaneously if we can.
Do you, and I think we've already covered what sort of determines whether it gets made into an audiobook, right? Because you guys already talked about the acquisition process and sort of figuring it out then. Do you ever go back through your backlist that maybe never was made into an audio and say, okay, or re-record something that's already been recorded?
Yeah, both. We do a lot of combing of the backlist to see what's available. And last year we published a brand new version of Charlotte's Web with Meryl Streep and an all-star cast, which is nominated for awards and did really, really well for us. So we are always kind of looking. I do think there is, in the same way that a print book, there's that classic that is done. There are audiobooks that are classics that you don't want to touch, but there are also opportunities to kind of try something new.
And that makes me think of sort of how audiobooks might bump up against film rights. And if you're, how does that work? I mean, I guess you guys know what rights you have and what you don't have, and you just have to be careful that no one in Hollywood is already doing something with that project. The authors, I imagine, would be aware of that.
There, and I think, an audiobook is still ultimately just a format of the print book. It's still just the written word presented in a different way.
Yeah. All right. So what sorts of stories and genres work well as audio original?
I think it might be me again.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just rambling on and on. The same types of stories and genres that work well on the print book, which is good stories, well-told stories, well done. I think an audio original sometimes adds a little something extra, maybe something you can't quite get on the print page. But what we're finding is, last year we did a Star Wars original, Star Wars Dooku, which was extremely successful and which then became a print book. So the lines are very, very blurry, but at the end of the day, it's just a great story.
Can I jump in here for just a second?
Yeah, of course.
One of my absolute favorite audiobooks is the Beastie Boys book. And the Beastie Boys book as a book is an amazing object to read. It's the art and the stories on the page are phenomenal, but the audiobook is a completely different experience in this case. There are more than 40 narrators, all of them people you know, all of them famous musicians and actors and such, telling stories of the Beastie Boys. They are companions and completely different experiences. And so really to look at, when you see that kind of opportunity, when you think of what works well as an audio original, I mean, this wasn't an audio original, but like when the voice can bring a story to life in a way that you can't do it on the page, it's an amazing experience on audio.
Amy Poehler's book was also really cool, I think, for that reason, and that she had people who were, throughout her life. Did you guys do Amy Poehler's book? I can't remember. No. Okay. Well, we won't talk about that book.
We listen to other people's books.
Still talk about
We do.
No, it's a great example because she had, Seth Meyers and other people come in and actually do sort of stuff that wasn't in the printed book, but that just made the audio an experience that you wanted to have, but you also still wanted to read the book, which it sounds like the Beastie Boys is a great example of that.
And comedians often, we say over-index, like when something overperforms as an audio. And books by comedians where you have that full cast and they're almost more ad-libbing than reading straight from the page do really, really well in audio. And Becka, what you were saying earlier, people do buy both. They buy the book and then they also want to listen and have that intimate experience of, these comedians in their ears too.
I feel like there was a time years and years ago in publishing where it was talked about that you would actually bundle the two. So someone would buy a book, but they would get the audio and the hardcover. But I guess that sort of did never happen. Am I right?
It's really hard to execute on the physical side because you know, we played around with it for so long with CDs and hardcovers, and the manufacturing cost of the two together just made it too prohibitive for a consumer.
Yeah.
Now there are all kinds of technologies that link the two together, link E and audio, but we find that, I mean, the sales are really tiny and it's such a small percentage. People don't really want E and audio, they want print and audio,
Yeah.
and there just isn't an easy way to facilitate that. So maybe that's one of the future things we can hope for in 5 years.
So, guys, I'm sure you want to share an email address with us. Do you accept direct submissions for audio original content? Lance, I think this might be you again.
It is the same as with a print book. We do not accept unsolicited submissions. You need to come through an agent. You know, well, I think later we may be talking a little bit about recording your own audio and how to kind of self-publish an audio. And sometimes we find things there, but we do not accept unsolicited submissions, just like on the print side.
Honest answer, and we appreciate that. What advice would you give someone considering pursuing self-publishing an audiobook? Amanda.
That was me. I thought that might be someone else. So there are a couple of platforms. Findaway has one called Voices, and Audible has ACX. So basically, you have your manuscript, and it's a marketplace to create an audiobook. So you can find a narrator, you can find a director, and put the group together to create your own audio. ACX, the Audible platform, is you're publishing exclusively with Audible, and it won't be distributed to any other accounts. With Findaway Voices, what's great is that they distribute to Audible and then also to every other platform out there. So it's a great way to get your works into the library market and onto Apple and Google and all of the other players there.
Oh my gosh, it's so helpful. Thank you. I'm sure there are a lot of people on this who are going to be interested in checking both of those out, and we'll send a follow-up email with those places referenced for sure. So let's talk about actually making an audiobook. I've heard I love this one. I've heard audiobooks on which the narrator stays within his or her own voice, and others in which the narrator creates a different voice for each character. Which is preferable and most popular, which might even be the same thing or two different things? Do you guys have an opinion on this?
I'll jump in here again, just because I just spent so much time in both our studios in Los Angeles and our studios in New York with narrators talking about some of these things. And there was a lot of debate about this, about what you should do as a woman voicing a man in a book, as a man voicing a woman, as someone with an accent or an affectation that you're trying to come across in your voice. And most of the narrators that we spoke to in this project said that it was more of an intent than an actual, like, real like a dialect, you know, unless the character is very actually speaking you're told is speaking with an accent, but that it's a shift in tone, it's a shift in the way you hold your body when you speak. It is one of our narrators talked about where the voice comes from in your body. Does it come from the bottom of your throat, or does it come from your back? Does it come from your knee even? Like, where does this idea of this character come from? And I don't think that you can say which is more popular or which is preferred, because I think it's a personal preference. When you talk about recording your own audiobooks or what you like, I mean, it's who you like, as with anything. You like certain actors, you like certain authors, and you like certain narrators and certain narrator styles. And I think when you find somebody that you love, I noticed in the comments somebody talking about Julia Whalen. I could listen to Julia Whalen read anything. Doesn't matter. Anything. And she has done accents and voices and different intonations, but I think you have to find the style that works for you. There's not a yes or no answer to the question.
I feel like one of the more polarizing books recently that sort of touches on this is the Ronan Farrow, Catch and Kill, which I listened to on audio after a friend of mine told me that it made her crazy because he voices all of those different voices. But I actually really enjoyed it. So I think they're an example of just it's personal taste, right? And I used to go, as I'm sure you guys do every year, to the Audio Awards, where those narrators are rock stars and receive, wonderful awards for the work that they do in narrating. So I'm sure Julia Whalen has probably won many of those over time.
She is the rock star of the Audio Awards. Yeah, and I guess it was just last year, was she Female Narrator of the Year last year for Educated. Yeah, so she is the #1 rock star. That was the last event I think most of us attended before New York really shut down, was the Audio Awards this year.
Wow.
If I can say, I just see it. Listeners have a strong feeling about men voicing women and vice versa. When you're casting, you're casting for the whole story, and a lot of narration obviously is single voice narration, and there are many characters in a story. So I hear you, but again, there are many people who would say they don't want, like the Ronan Farrow, they don't want a bunch of different voices, or they don't want a bunch of different actors in one book. And then some people want like full cast, like Lincoln and the Bardo, that Becka was mentioning, which is a massive cast of narrators and has done really well. So it's definitely a divisive conversation that happens.
Well, and I like the way you described it, though, the way that producer was giving notes, because it sounded more about just taking on a persona, but not mimicking or, going the stereotypes, instead just really changing something subtly so that people can tell. I mean, that's really what you're trying to do, is make sure people know this is a different character speaking right now than the other character who's been speaking.
It's interesting. Some of it's physicality in the booth. If you watch a narrator record, and they change the way they sit, they lean up, they turn a little sideways, they slouch down when they talk about certain things. It's very interesting to watch them go through the characters.
How long, let me ask you a question, just I'm curious, and I'm sure it varies, but how long does it take to record an audiobook?
The average is 3 hours in the studio for 1 hour of finished audio. So, your better narrators can do that more quickly. Author reads tend to take longer if it's an author who's not a practiced public speaker or an actor. So, but generally the rule is 3 hours in studio equal 1 finished hour of audio.
It's a long time. Do you guys is there a studio in the Random House building? Do you guys have yeah, you do.
We have 4 in our New York office, and we have 10 out in Los Angeles.
Interesting. 10 in Los Angeles. That's a lot. Okay. There used to be, this is a question that interested me, because I remember this as well, that there used to be so many more abridged audios, it seems, but now everything seems to be recorded unabridged. What happened to change that? I can't remember who is going to answer this.
Actually, we were talking about this today, and Amanda, I'm going to put you on the spot because you were so much better at this than I could ever be. So please, publisher DiCerno, take this question.
All right, so here's everyone's history lesson for the day. In the Wayback Machine, it was so expensive to produce audio, and the marketplace was so small, that audiobooks were absolutely butchered into these tiny 3 to 5 hour abridgments. And it was in order to keep the costs down so that they could be sold in a retail environment. And then the unabridged recording actually sold as a separate right and lived separately in the library marketplace. So it was only institutional sales that could afford the programs that were 30 and 40 CDs for one program. So the market was really split. Abridged was retail and unabridged was library. And then when digital became the more prominent format, listeners always wanted the entire audiobook. It just wasn't available in a retail setting. So when digital became the primary format, we were able to do almost, well, now we do everything as unabridged, but it really migrated to the unabridged format. And we'll publish about 1,700 titles this year, and less than 10 of them will have an abridged and unabridged edition. And the abridgments, we only our biggest books, our most commercial books, continue to have an abridgment, and that's because they can sell in the mass merch channel, which needs a lower price point, so that, you know, we can get them into Target and Walmart and the truck stops if we have an abridgment, but they're only taking our most commercial authors.
Gotcha. And I'm sure authors are thrilled that their work isn't being abridged, you know.
Yes.
That must be what a tough process to have somebody abridge it and then have to share it with an author who sees all of their work, their words slashed. I love that Deanna Roy in our chat box is mentioning having 10 cassettes and being so upset in her car when she'd be done with one cassette and wouldn't have the next one because she was afraid they'd get too hot.
That's right. I forgot about that. That is a consideration in Texas for sure.
Melting your cassette tapes. What suggestions do you have for people interested in working in audiobooks? So we had a lot of folks who were questioning, you know, how you get into voice talent, but then also just in the production of audiobooks.
I'll start with the voice talent part. Interestingly enough, given, you know, that Penguin Random House is publishing 1,400 plus audiobooks in a year, we're looking for voice talent. And so much looking for voice talent that we actually created what we like to call sort of the IMBD of voice talent, and it's called AHAB. Today, the URL is ahab.us. In about 2 weeks, it'll be ahabtalent.com. So keep both of those URLs in mind. We're in the process of migrating the site into a new feature. But what AHAB is a casting bit of software that Penguin Random House producers, and ultimately down the road, producers in the industry, both in audiobooks, in the commercial space, in the video game space, and likely in the advertising space as well, hopefully will be able to come to and source narrator talent for their project. We will be able to listen to clips on this site. We are able to cast from this site. We are able to search for very specific types of skills that we're looking for, be that language, interest, age range, you know, that you can do with your voice. It is an incredible tool. Right now, it's being used primarily just by Penguin Random House. I encourage you, if you are a narrator, to go check it out, and you can build your profile. You can load samples there for us to look at, and keep your profile up to date. Our producers will find you. They're looking for talent in this site.
Oh, that's so exciting. Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right. And what about working in audio? What about getting a job in your biz? How does someone even begin to do that? Anyone?
I can jump in here. Most of us, so Lance, Donna, and I all came from the book side of the business, the print side of the business. So for most of our division, we're book people. You know, we all found our way to publishing and then made our way into the audio division. The production team is the one that really has the technical skills to record books, and that's comprised of our producers, our engineers, quality control staff, post-production staff. And that team, many of them just pick it up. It's almost like an apprenticeship. Our newest, most junior producer was, until very recently, my assistant, and she's just moved over to our production team. Another of my former assistants is one of the more senior producers in that production team now, and is one of the key drivers who created AHAB Talent and really pushed for that to be there. So a lot of it is just kind of, you make your way to publishing and then you learn audio. Other people that come to it usually have a radio or some kind of audio background and move in that way.
Great. Oh, I love this one. I frequently listen to audiobooks in my car and drive about and find it relaxing and informative and a great way to pass the time. Lately, I've started some books that I could not finish because they are so over dramatized to the point of distraction. Is this a new trend in audiobooks?
Laughing because we all love this question. We
I
all
love
birthed
this question.
and whoever wrote this question, if you're here, I want to know what audiobooks you're talking about. Please type it. Listen, I talked a little bit about this before, right? This is a decisive thing, just like speed is a decisive thing in audiobooks. Some people think actors are too slow and some people want to speed them up. And purists are like, how dare you listen at 1.5 times speed or more? I think that we definitely want to bring the best production to the table that we can. We're not looking to annoy our customers, obviously. And it's a personal choice. What you find over dramatic, Lance might find really awesome, right? So it is hard to say. I mean, I am a person who listens to a lot of nonfiction on audio because being a reader since I was a small child, fiction, I want to create my own world in my own head. I don't want to have it created for me. That's not to say I don't listen to fiction. Of course I do. I work in audiobooks. I listen to everything, but my preference is to listen to nonfiction as audio and read fiction. So you have your preference. I encourage you to pay attention to who the narrators you like are, and watch for what they do. They might introduce you to a genre you don't know, and hopefully not in an annoying way. I don't have a better answer for that because it's such a personal choice. But we do like this question.
I think it's a great answer, Donna. And also, if you do have a narrator you love, they are all very, very active on, I think, every social media channel available. So follow them. You can see what they're doing. They love to share the books that they're reading and what they're doing in studio.
Well, and in the way that we often tell our community to write fan letters to authors that they love, because authors enjoy hearing from people. Consider writing a fan letter to your narrators that you love, or reaching out in some way to say you really enjoy them. I'm sure they'd love hearing that. And if you're an aspiring narrator, it might even be a cool way to start a connection. Not that I'm suggesting anyone stalk any narrator online in any way, shape, or form. Is there an avenue for self-published authors to produce a quality audiobook? I think that you covered this, Amanda. I think you gave some really great examples. And again, we will follow up with that information.
And I can add 2 things just there, and it's actually the next question. So we'll go on to the next question.
Oh, for the platform?
Yes.
Yeah, the program. Tell us.
When I saw this question, I called the head of production, who couldn't join us this evening due to another commitment. And I just said, this is not my expertise. Can you talk to me a little bit about what tools you might recommend to someone who wants to do this? And obviously the Avid suite of Pro Tools are sort of the industry standard that people use to record audiobooks. But he recommended something to me. I'm going to say the word. I don't know it myself because I'm not a producer, but he said the Reaper tools are gaining in a lot of popularity for self-produced audiobooks. So the Avid suite and the Reaper suite of tools to record your own audiobook are the head of our productions recommendations.
And are these the same sorts of things people would use to make a podcast? Do you know? Is it kind of the same idea? I mean, different, but yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. Audio packaging has been, for lack of a better word, so wasteful. Cassette tapes, CDs, bulky cases. Are you moving away from physical packaging? And what happens to unsold, unused audiobooks when you clear them from the warehouse? Please don't say landfill. I think this is you, Donna.
Packaging is most often dictated by retailers and less so by producers. It's about how the package can sit in the retail space. What is good news is that 90% of our business is really download. So there's not a whole lot of packaging left to be dealing with. That said, you think about the packaging you see in your libraries, right? That packaging is quite large. We're trying to use all of the product that we have to get to the point of when you're clearing them from the warehouse. My team in marketing and publicity does an enormous number of trade shows every year. And I'm sure if you've gone into particularly Book People, because I've seen it there, this idea that you have a blind date with a book. You'll see a table of books and they're wrapped in paper, and like you get to pick a book based on some clue that they give you. We do that at trade shows. So we'll take our physical copies of audiobooks and use them as promotional items if we have extras that are sitting, quote unquote, in the warehouse or sitting in our office, and we'll do blind dates with audiobooks. So we don't want to be any more wasteful than anybody else does. We look for opportunities to use them. We look for ways to donate them. We look for all of those things. I'm not going to say 100% of the time something has not ended up in a landfill, unfortunately, but we work really hard to make sure that we use every single thing we can.
Yeah. That's a great answer. And I love those blind dates. Such a brilliant thing. Don't you think one independent bookstore came up with that, and then suddenly everybody has it? And it's so smart, but that's cool.
Where I saw it in, but when I came over to the audio team, early last year, and we were going to ALA, the American Library Association show, and I was like, can we try this with audiobooks? I mean, why not? We had 10 copies of something sitting in the office, and we just brought them with us and wrapped them up and made a promotion out of it. So I try really hard not to waste anything if I can help it.
That's why you are where you are, Donna, because you have great ideas. How do you, I think you touched on this, but if there's anything you want to add to how you choose the reader and voice artist, but then also that idea of when you think, it seems like it's more often in nonfiction, but when you think the author is the right choice for a book.
Amanda, do you want to talk, or Lance, is the author the right choice for a book?
Yeah, I mean, most people prefer a professional narrator. So that survey I mentioned that was just, the results were released yesterday, overwhelmingly for fiction, listeners prefer a professional actor to narrate. And for nonfiction too, over 50% prefer an actor to narrate. And then you have certain nonfiction that simply could not be read by anyone else. So we'll take Mrs. Obama, for example. Nobody else in the world could have read her story except for her. So with celebrities, public figures, absolutely, they need to tell their story. And then for people who are accustomed to public speaking, Brene Brown is one of our best-selling authors, and a fellow Texan. So, she has a great voice, and she's so accustomed to speaking, and she speaks so well. Again, nobody else could read that work. Other nonfiction works, even if they're by experts, they don't necessarily need to be read by the author. A great example that we use often is Educated, that is such a personal, deeply, deeply personal story, but was narrated by Julia Whelan because the author is a great writer, and she was very aware that she did not want to voice those characters. She did not want to voice her mother and her father. She really wanted to have an actor do that. And yeah, that's the work for which Julia Whelan did win Audiobook Narrator of the Year.
And she did such a great job with that.
She really did.
And voicing different genders and different ages, yes, and the whole thing. I loved it.
I think, if I can just jump in for a minute too, I think the other thing that authors need to keep in mind, it's not easy. As we were saying, it's 3 hours in the studio for an hour of recorded work. So it's a lot of work. It's really hard. And I think there are times that authors think, oh, it'll be really fun if I can read my audiobook, and not realizing that it's a second job in itself. And you are the really brilliant writer of this work, and someone else is a really brilliant narrator. And so you kind of need to pass that torch to them.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Are you looking for readers? We covered that, and we got a great resource in ahab.us. Is it okay to have music in the audio? What's the process for clearing those rights? And do you, the publisher, do it, or does the author do it? Can't remember.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
We will do a little bit of music in some of our recordings, a little bit kind of beginning and end, or between chapters as transition. Too much music can really be distracting to your audiobook, in that same way that, going back to the question of, audiobooks are too dramatic, audiobooks have too much music, it can be distracting. If you want to include actual like popular music, well-known songs, it's very expensive and problematic to try to clear those rights, and it often falls to the author to do so, and it can be very, very expensive and really cost prohibitive. So we try to steer people away when we can.
So someone in the chat box is asking, I think, a great question, which is how much can the author be involved in the selection of the narrator? And, you know, as little as being able to, you know, hear a few different options, and as much as actually getting to negotiate specific narrators or what have you. What is your experience? You typically, especially for a debut author, I would assume they're probably not going to have the ability to say yes or no, but can probably hear some options.
Yeah, we never want to just record something with a narrator that the author hates. We always want to work with them and find someone that they really like. We try to make it like a really collaborative consultation when we can. It can get tricky, particularly when you're into personal nonfiction and this is my story and none of these voices add up, to find the right narrator. But we really try to present a nice suite of narrating voices for people to hear and find the one that works and speaks to them. Great,
thank you. Okay, we're gonna get into sales and marketing. I think this is maybe our last topic. Is marketing for the audiobook different than marketing for a hardcover or paperback? And I guess maybe sort of what are the different ways that you can market an audio versus those print forms?
So it's interesting. I worked at Barnes & Noble for 16 years in the corporate office doing events, actually with Amanda way back in the day, in many cases. And then I spent that much time working on one of the print division side, working on the marketing of a lot of books that we've been talking about. One of the things that is interesting is that Amanda said, you want to make the book available in whatever format the customer wants. And it doesn't make sense to market a hardcover book and an audiobook as two separate items all of the time. I've spent a lot of time this year with our team working with our colleagues on the print side of our business, putting our marketing and publicity plans in lockstep together. So we're promoting a book in all formats, in all of the things that we're doing, whether those are earned media opportunities or paid media opportunities. Now, that said, there are unique places that we as audiobook publishers can get to consumers. And they are the things you know. People listen to podcasts all the time. Funny enough, the print side of our company doesn't spend a lot of their marketing opportunities on the podcast business yet. They'll get there. But we do. We do. We also advertise at Spotify and Pandora and the streaming services where listeners are. So we are definitely, I would say 80% of the time, we're working, neck and neck with our print colleagues on what our marketing and publicity campaigns look like. And then oftentimes we will sort of take the tail of the campaign and extend it through the listening opportunities that we have to market books.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, I think we might have touched on this, but how soon, I'm thinking this might be from someone who has released their own ebook, honestly, but I could be wrong, but how soon after an ebook release should the audio be released? So if something is being released digitally original, so not in hardcover or paper, would you assume that the audio would be done simultaneously?
I think, like we said earlier, it's easier if you can do it simultaneously, so you can do all of your publicity, marketing, promotional efforts, if you're doing it yourself particularly, all at the same time. That said, if your ebook's out and it's doing well and you haven't done an audiobook yet, do an audiobook now. Get another hit on that ebook and get the audiobook now. I think you want to do simultaneously, but if you haven't done it, you can do it later. It's fine. There's no set rule.
Great. When I download an audio from the library, how does the author get paid?
It's me. So the same way they would be paid if a patron borrowed a book from a library. So, you sell to libraries in digital the same way you sell to them in physical, and the authors earn a royalty for every sale.
Got it. All right. How do you work with Audible or other subscription services?
Very carefully.
Tell us more about that.
Audible, so here's another piece of fun audiobook trivia. Audible has been around now for about 23 years, and their first investor was actually Random House. So Random House and Audible have a very, very long history together. When Audible launched, and Don Katz, who the founder and until very recently the CEO of Audible, was such a true visionary. You have to remember, he launched Audible before Apple made an iPod. So he actually had to make his own device. So the people who would take the time to go into a big desktop, think back over 20 years to what computers looked like, and then hook up, and I still have the original device in my office, hook up a very clunky MP3 player that, I mean, the thing is in the Smithsonian, you know, it's not nearly as pretty as any Apple device ever was. And I think Don would freely admit that. They would have to attach that to their computer, download the files from Audible onto their computer, and then upload it to this device to take it with them to listen. So in short, the people who were listening to audio digitally over 20 years ago were real early adopters and real tech fans. So they were listening to a lot of technical nonfiction, and the fiction they were listening to was largely sci-fi and fantasy. So we used to work very, very closely with Audible to see what titles should be published in a digital format, because not everything was made for Audible, and they would actually sit in our editorial meetings. We had a shared Random House Audible imprint. So now fast forward over 20 years, they are the biggest audiobook retailer right now. So much of the growth in audiobooks is absolutely attributable to Audible, but we also have Apple in the audiobook business, and we have Google in the audiobook business, and we have a lot of very, very small niche audiobook platforms like Christian Audio. Findaway, that has the Findaway Voices product, is a distributor, basically a digital distributor that pushes audio files to dozens and dozens and dozens of audiobook platforms. So now it's a very, very robust marketplace. And Penguin Random House believes in a wholesale model for audiobooks. So it's one sale to one user, the same way that we sell physical books. So we don't participate in unlimited subscription models. We only participate in wholesale models. So we in the US have always been that way. Some of the other territories participated in different platforms until recently. But in the past year, Penguin Random House only participates now in wholesale models.
And that's a big deal because you guys are the biggest, right?
You know, as a Texan, it's really hard for me to say that technically we are not the biggest, but I feel like we've established a trust, so I have to say, I like to put it this way. Recorded Books is technically the biggest if you're looking at the number of titles published. They have the largest catalog out there. I like to say I have more of what sells. So I own much more of the bestseller list than they do. But Recorded Books technically has a bigger catalog.
Just really quickly before we move on, I just wanted to add, when Amanda was talking about Audible and Apple and Google, there's a retailer I want to make sure that everybody knows about, particularly given the start of this presentation, and obviously wanting to support independent bookstores and book people in Austin, is a participant with this platform. I hope you all know about Libro FM.
Thank
Libro
you,
FM
that's
is
important.
an audio platform that services independent bookstores, so you can get digital downloadable audio from Libro FM and choose what bookstore you want that audio to be supported through. So if you don't know Libro FM, I encourage you to check it out.
Well, and that might be foreshadowing because they're going to know about it very soon. But yes, thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
I didn't know about it. So here we are. We asked you guys, and you so kindly agreed to share with us some recommendations that you have of audiobooks that you've listened to recently that you just think everybody, whether they're, seasoned audio listeners or if they're trying to, if they want to check out an audio for the first time, might go to. So Amanda, we're going to start with you. If you want to tell us about these couple of titles.
Oh, so I'm absolutely in love with Deacon King Kong, and it's one of those audiobooks that I'm actually trying not to finish. I'm in love with all of these characters so much. Dominic Hoffman does an amazing job on this book, and James McBride has written such a character-rich Brooklyn 1969 story with all the different types of personalities that make Brooklyn so rich and so fun. And he's written a really beautiful, fast-paced, loving portrait of all different types of people. So I really don't want that to end. I'm nearing the very, very end and keep finding myself reading a magazine article instead of finishing because I'm not ready to let go of these characters yet. And because there are so many characters, and I think, a couple of weeks ago, I was just so distracted with everything that's going on around us in the world right now. I actually was having trouble sitting and reading a book, and I was just going on very long walks. And, this was the book that I took with me as I was getting some exercise. So I am really just in love with it. And then a recent acquisition that Lance made is How Contagion Works from Paolo Giordano. And he's a scientist from Italy who really just looked at this pandemic from a scientific point of view and what was happening to our world, how long it would last, what habits would he hold on to through this. It's just a really candid look at what was happening from a scientific perspective. It's very short. It's only an hour, maybe an hour and a few minutes long, but it actually really put me at ease that science will come out ahead of this, and we just all need to be patient while science works to get us there. So I actually found it very reassuring and calming.
I like that it's short because it sounds like something that I would love to listen to, but I couldn't listen to like 20 hours of it.
Yeah, exactly. This is the perfect length.
And that's another reason that I was thinking about audiobooks for a conversation right now too. And someone said it in the chat, and you just mentioned it, Amanda, that I found it really hard to read physical books, to just sit down in a space where my head is clear and I can focus. And audio and podcasts especially, but audiobooks have been a real saving grace of this during this time. Okay, who's up next? Lance Fitzgerald.
Hi. So I, like Donna, was a nonfiction audiobook listener. I would listen to celebrity memoir and anything nonfiction. And You Never Forget Your First Love. And the first novel I listened to was Eleanor Oliphant Is Completely Fine. And I was enwrapped. We were in the car, and I would stay in the car and listen for another half hour. I think I actually finished it in the car waiting. I wouldn't go into the house because I wanted to know. I was just charmed. I loved it completely. So that was the first novel I ever listened to. And right now I'm listening to The Gravity of Us, which is a YA novel about a boy whose father is selected to be on a NASA trip to Mars. And it's going to uproot his whole life. And they have to move from Brooklyn to Texas, where all these astronauts live in a small town. And there's a reality series that they're all being filmed for. And he's very worried about what's going to happen to his family when they move down there. And it's charming. And it's set up in this excellent way where you get these interstitial reality series moments in between. And then I just finished over the winter, Me by Elton John, which is a funny example of that idea that only certain people can tell their stories. And this one, Elton John reads the first chapter and the last chapter, and the rest is read by Taron Egerton, who played Elton John in the movie whatever that movie was, Rocket Man. So I was like, okay, how is this going to work? And I'm going to say it, and it might sound controversial. Taron Egerton is a better Elton John than Elton John is. He just, the story unfolds in this just fantastic, dynamic way throughout. So those are three that I have enjoyed and I'm really enjoying right now.
Did anyone listen to the audiobook for, why am I forgetting his name now? Rolling Stone guy, Rolling Stone.
Jan Wenner?
No, the bands.
Keith Richards.
Yes. And it's Johnny Depp. Well, it's Keith Richards reads the prologue, I guess, whatever you'd call that. Johnny Depp starts reading it, and then it's just clear, it like seems clear to me that about 3 chapters in, Johnny Depp's like, yeah, this is taking too long. Like, I'm not really into reading this audiobook anymore. So suddenly it's someone else reading the audiobook, and then it comes back to Johnny Depp like for the last chapter or something. It's a real wild ride in more ways than one. But I would also say Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. It's a wonderful book, and I bet the audio is probably pretty special because, yeah, it's cool. Donna, what do you got?
So, Pretty Things just went on sale this week. And speaking of, Julia Whalen, Hilary Huber, this is fiction, so I'm proving myself wrong. But this is so delicious. It's deceit and grifting and drama, and I'm not finished yet. I've only just started listening. When I was out in our California office, the producer who was working on this had come out of the studio and said, you all need to go listen to this right now. It's so good. It's the best thing I've ever done. Everybody in our company is talking about both this book and the audiobook. I highly encourage you to check it out. This is the book that Nicole Kidman just recently optioned to make her next project out of. It's so good, twisty, and awesome.
It's a beautiful jacket. I love that.
Yeah, totally. Samantha Irby, caustic, funny, a little bit raunchy. This is like my sweet spot of things like I like to listen to. I want something to entertain me, to make me go, oh, did she really just say that? I love it so much. I love all of her stuff. I can't recommend it enough. And I love that it's short and I can dip in and out of it and not feel like I've lost my way. Sometimes I need 20 minutes and then I need to go do something else, versus being immersed in 20 hours of something that I feel like I sometimes have to backtrack and go, wait, where was I? Let me start listening again because I was distracted or what have you. And I am a music head. I love music memoir. I collect it. I'm a huge fan. Every audio really that I listened to religiously before I even came to work in audio was music related. We've done some really great ones. I love this one so much, and there are more. We have so many good choices in this space, from the Prince book to the book from John Doe from X, to so many things that are just so much fun to listen to. I can highly recommend, but since I could only really pick 2 or 3, this is what I gave you.
Well, I want to just address one of the questions that was in the chat box a little while ago, and it was from somebody who has a book that they've published, I believe, on their own, and they're wondering about the potential for it in audio. And it just made me want to circle back again. If Amanda, if you don't mind, naming those 2 resources that folks can go to in order to do their own audios, because I think it would be helpful to repeat that, because that might be helpful for that person.
Of course, and I can also email it to you so you have direct links. But it's Audible's platform is called ACX. It's an acronym for Audible Content Exchange. So that's one place, but when you sign an agreement there, you are publishing exclusively for Audible. The other is Findaway. The Findaway company is the distributor I mentioned that pushes out to all of the audiobook companies, and their platform is called Findaway Voices. And both function in the same way, and that it's an audiobook marketplace where the rights holder for the book basically goes out and solicits a narrator and a director to go and produce the audio.
Perfect. Thank you. Do you guys do much with, do you do short story collections on audio? Do you take short stories individually? I'm just looking at one of the chat questions. Do short stories sell well on audiobooks? Maybe Lance, what are you guys doing in that world?
We do. We publish short stories on audiobook in kind of a variety of ways. It'll be a short story collection that's read by one narrator, or each story is read by a different narrator. So it definitely can happen. We've yet to really figure out the model for the individual short story. It's more as the collection sells better, but we definitely do.
And then, you know, somebody's asking in the chat a little bit about, you know, understandably how the current times, how this pandemic has impacted publishing and Penguin Random House specifically, since obviously you guys work there. But, you know, it occurred to me, even from the audio perspective, that I imagine, you know, production is probably halted in terms of narrators going into studios, but maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's something people are doing from their home studios. So can you just talk, as much as you're comfortable with discussing, sort of what your thoughts are in terms of how things have been impacted by what's going on in the world?
Sure, I'll jump in. You know, we're ending week 6 right now of working from home, and I think the first 3 weeks we all, I mean, I guess everyone everywhere was feeling the same way. We were all just a little bit felt like we were in free fall, and you know, we're a company that has a great work from home program. So on the technical side, it was very easy for us to come home and work from home and have access to all the tools in our company. Like, in that way, it was very seamless on the technical side. I think for many of us, it was just hard, you know, not to be around people every day and not to be in our office. And the first few weeks really felt like triage, getting things done differently. Now it feels very much business as usual. So Lance is buying lots of books, and Donna is marketing and promoting and publicizing hundreds and hundreds of books. And in some ways, the opportunities now are different and better and faster. And, you know, a lot of the noise has been cut out, and you're really, really just focused on things. The production side was probably the most challenging, because we have 14 studios where we do most of our production that were all shut down and remain shut down. We were very happy to have the AHAB tool, which does have information on home studios and home narrators. So we were able to migrate everything that we do into home studios. We won't do that forever, but right now, for really good actors who invested in great home studios, more and more of them will probably continue to record from home with a director who can Skype into the session. And I think that that might be a way we work more and more often going forward. So now I feel like we've, as much as we desperately miss one another and seeing one another and being together, I think we've really found our groove with publishing, and we're working and we're moving forward. And Lance, I mean, I feel like every other day you're sending 2 or 3 great proposals that are coming through, and those are just the ones I'm seeing. There are a lot of books being shopped around right now.
Yeah.
Okay, can I answer this question about the demos for AHAB, because it's come up a couple of times?
Yeah.
I encourage you to go onto the website and take a look, and you'll be able to look at profiles and see demos that are out there. Obviously, you want to put your best foot forward in the demos that you put forward. You can put 3 samples up on the site, and you want the demos to show the breadth of the kind of work that you can do as a narrator. If you're self-recorded, they should just be the best thing that you can do, right? And as you grow in the business and you get more experience in the business, you change those demos out, just like you update your resume. They don't have to be professionally recorded. They can be self-recorded demos, but you should listen to some others that are out there so that you get a sense of the style that people who are professionals in the business now present as the demos that they put forward.
Great. Thank you so much. So we are going to, we promised people a giveaway, and we have folks, a lot of people actually have been on this entire time, which I'm so pleased and proud about. So you mentioned Libros, and I left an S off here, but Libros FM. And what we want to do, the Writers League, is offer 3 free months subscriptions, which includes 1 free audiobook. And we would encourage you to maybe buy one of the books that our panelists have talked about tonight. Through Libros FM, we're going to let you guys as the panelists pick the winners. It's going to be completely subjective, and people can pander to you all they want to. But we're going to ask a question we asked at the top, which was all right, guys, in the chat box, who would you pick to narrate either the project you're currently working on, or I like better, your life story? And if you already typed it in, write it in again. Just be sure to send it into all panelists and attendees. And then we're going to let Lance and Donna and Amanda pick their favorites. And if none of you do it, I'm winning all of these subscriptions because I pick Meryl Streep. And you could be silly or you could be serious, whatever you want to do. So come on, guys. Who would you guys pick while everyone's trying to figure it out? Who would you pick, Lance Fitzgerald? You would get me to do it, right? You want
I would. It was only Becka Oliver will read my life story, without a doubt.
Oh, James Earl Jones. I love that. Donna, how about you?
I have to say,
you probably have the upper hand because you've actually heard a lot of these people.
well, I mean, like narrator versus actress. I just burst out laughing about Liam Neeson because I'm just trying to imagine, like, I have a specific set of skills like coming through. I don't know who I would want to narrate my life. I wish my mind is completely blank.
That's okay.
Angela
I put you
Lansbury.
on the spot. Angela Lansbury is wonderful. Amanda, who's going to do your life story?
You know, I think I would just have to flip a coin between Julia Whalen and Hillary Huber. Two of my favorites.
Right. The best correct answer. All right. Anyone else going to throw something in there? And then we're going to have these guys pick whoever they saw as their favorite potential narrator. Viola Davis.
Oh, Viola Davis is a great one. Yeah.
Recently, I just finished binge watching How to Get Away with Murder, and it is so ridiculous and wonderful. Oh my gosh, Michelle Obama, that might be a winner right there.
A recent Grammy winner for her audiobook.
Oh, of course she is. Do you guys hang out with her all the time?
Donna does.
All right, I'm going to put you guys on the spot. Did you see a name that you want to throw out as your favorite potential narrator for someone's life story? Lance,
I'm snatching it before anyone else does. Stacey Egan and Chloe Sevigny. Yes, I would listen to that audiobook in a heartbeat. So
right.
Stacey Egan, congratulations.
Stacey, send me your email. You can send it to me private or on the chat, whatever you want to do. All right, Donna, who you picking?
Liam Neeson. I didn't even see who, but I think that's the funniest. I could totally listen to that.
All right, whoever threw Liam Neeson out there, send me your email so we can give you your free month subscription. And Amanda.
I'm going with Emily's pick of Viola Davis.
Nice. All right, so that is, those are our 3 winners. Thank you guys so much. You've been such a pleasure to talk to, and I know that our folks have really appreciated hearing all about the exciting world of audiobooks, and I bet you've gotten some audio fans just through the great stuff that you've shared. So we really appreciate your time, and I know you're going to get a lot of chatter of thanking you as well. So while that's happening, I'm just going to very quickly remind folks that next Thursday at 8 p.m. we're going to be doing our What We're Reading Now. So if you want to hear about our staff picks and some guest speakers, you can check that out. And then also our fundraiser for Bookwoman, which will be on May 2nd at 8 p.m. And it's going to be a super fun time. So check that stuff out. Yeah.
One more thing.
Yeah.
If you haven't downloaded our app, I want to encourage you to do that. Penguin Random House has an app called Volumes. in the App Store. And we have a couple of free audiobooks on there right now that you can access. There are 3 there. We have Grimm's Fairy Tales with Jim Dale, which is amazing. We have Great Expectation with the very fabulous narrator, John Lee. And then a little celebrity thrown in with The Wonderful Wizard of Oz with Paul Rudd and Brooke Shields. So those 3 are there for free now. They'll be there for about another week and a half for free. And then on May 10th, I hope you'll come back, because every couple of months we have a free book club pick. And our new, I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's secret, but on May 10th, our new coming on the Volumes app.
You can tell us, Donna. Come on, we're not going to tell anyone.
I will tell you, it's the mothers. Anyway, I encourage you to download the Volumes app. You can discover all the things that we've been talking about and more from Penguin Random House. And every once in a while, we throw you some free stuff.
No, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I was meaning to make sure you guys were able to say that. So thank you so much. And thanks for all that you do. And thanks for taking some time out of your very busy schedules to hang out with us and be safe. We know, we're dealing with our own stuff here in Texas, but New York, we're thinking about you all the time. So take care of yourselves, okay?
Thank you. And thanks
Thank you.
So
Of
fun.
course.
Thanks,
Cool.
everyone.
All right, guys, have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.